Chapter 4.3 Beehive. Tobias and Nika exited the abandoned warehouse, followed a service road, and approached Ceres' main drag. Its artificial atmosphere shimmered up ahead. The boundary between the desolate vacuum of space and the pressurized, life-giving oxygen inside was a thin layer of light. The dome's walls were pointillist holograms, made from hundreds upon thousands of blue plus signs. For everyone else, the Ceres colony was an oasis in space's desert. For Tobias and Nika, it was a beehive. They crossed the threshold and entered the outpost. The frontier town was no place for outlaws. Stars skiffs skimmed the rooftops and hovered overhead. Officers mingled in front of stores, gathered on the streets, and grouped at the corners. The road to the Drunken Comet was the busiest in town, and Tobias knew Claire put the screws to him. He hung his head low, but felt the prying eyes. The cops on the banisters leaned closer to get a better view. Bounty hunters salivated at the easy prey. He knew they were outnumbered 100-1, yet Nika didn't seem to care. "So, what happened to your ship hand?" Nika asked. "Not joining?" "Nah, I'd rather do this alone." "Alone, of course," Nika said with a smirk. "Just like you." "Just like me how?" "Abandoning a young girl in space, just like you did with us." "I ain't abandoning her, Tobias saw a bounty board over Nika's shoulder. His face was plastered on it with a wanted tag underneath. Bounty hunters and stars alike swarmed the board, checked the pick, and turned towards Tobias. He had parole, but parole only mattered if Claire was there. Out here, off her leash, Tobias was fair game. Tobias ducked his head and moved faster. This was not the place for him to be. The Drunken Comet was in sight at the end of the street. Its iconic neon comet crashed into its roof, made it easy to spot. It looked the same as Tobias remembered, before Ceres was overrun by stars and changed for the worse. Tobias checked the alley beside the Drunken Comet, and it was the same as he remembered. He clicked his tongue, sent Alpha away, and had her wait outside if needed. "Planning your escape already?" Nika asked. "Of course." "Leave it to the Silver Fox to be ready to run." "Better free than caught." "Yeah, it is, isn't it?" Nika looked at her rope bindings and back at Tobias. "Thanks for that." They approached the entrance. 2 double-swinging doors awaited them, and Tobias pushed through to enter the saloon. It fell silent the moment they entered. The entire bar turned, and all eyes trained on Tobias and Nika. The Drunken Comet was filled with bots and stars officers, the two things Tobias loved most. No one else wore masks. No one except Tobias and Nika. It was no foolproof disguise, but enough to buy a little time. His first step creaked against the floor. His second step echoed across the bar. They watched him like hawks until they slowly resumed what they were doing. Officers went back to drinking and talking, all while keeping one eye on Tobias. "You know, the masks make us look more suspicious." "Nika, another word and I rip yours off." He bet Claire loved this, leading him to a stars bar with no instruction of where she'd be. She loved putting him under her heel and having the great Silver Fox on her leash. The power trip intoxicated her, and Tobias let her have it. He gave her that satisfaction, in exchange for the answers he needed. It was a game of the fox and the hound, and for him, the fox always won. Tobias was swimming with sharks, but he tried to blend in. He yanked Nika by her restraints as if he was the hunter and she was his bounty. They didn't know the invisible chains Claire already had him in. His act was only a distraction, and he still heard patrons whisper, "Something strange there. Who's the new guy? Looks like that bounty. You think? No, he couldn't be." Tobias was too deep to turn back. He dragged Nika to the bar, pulled out a floating stool, and sat them both down. Menu holograms flickered in front of them, but Tobias ignored it. He reached into his pocket, rustled through lint and loose mints, and ponied up a few credits for the bartender. "Excuse me, miss." She turned to him, smacking gum like chewing cud, and slung her dish rag over her shoulder. Her voice was like cracked gravel under the summer sun. "It's tap to pay, sweetheart." "Yeah, I'm still deciding what I want. I just got a question." He slid the credits closer to her. "You know Claire Sabueso? I'm supposed to meet her here." 3 officers and their bots sat at the edge of the bar. Their timing was no coincidence. The bartender looked at the credits, noticed the officers, and leaned over the money, discreetly sliding it into her apron pocket. "Sabueso the Bloodhound." "The one. She's got a private booth in the back. Check there." "Appreciate it." Nika leaned in and interrupted their discreet conversation. Give me a Moscow Mule," she said, and pointed to the hollow menu with her tied-up hands. "Coming up." The bartender turned away. The hollow menu flashed green, and Nika looked at Toby expectantly. "Drinks on you, buddy?" He squeezed her shirt and yanked her closer. "What are you doing?" "You spilled my drink on the ship. You owe me." The hollow menu flashed green again, expecting payment. The strobing green light caught Officer's eyes, and the bartender looked expectantly. "Any minute, Toby." Tobias grabbed Nika's wrist, tapped her link to the screen, and made her pay for her own drink. "What the hell, Toby? I wouldn't have ordered that if you weren't going to pay." "I never said I was." 3 officers slid closer as Tobias and Nika bickered. They had their suspicions, and now they were warranted. The first one, a young, overly confident cadet, was the first to speak. "It's strange to wear a mask inside a bar, you know," he said with the arrogance of youth. "I told him the same thing," Nika whispered, and Tobias kicked her shin beneath the bar. "Ow!" "What's strange is you walking up to a stranger to say that. Mind if we just enjoy our drinks?" The bartender came back, looked between the 2 of them, and placed Nika's drink in front of her. She snatched it in her 2 restrained hands, leaned back against the bar, and casually sipped while enjoying the show. Tobias was in the spotlight. The entire bar was watching. The conversations around them fell silent, and all the officers' eyes were on him. The cocky young officer feigned apology. "Sure, I don't want to interrupt. I just thought you looked like that bounty there." He pointed at the Silver Fox's bounty. Parole or not, good money went for Tobias's head. "You kind of look like him. Strange, right? And that bounty, well..." He whistled, as if amazed at the amount. "That bounty's enough to set someone up for a lifetime. Better than any star's pay, I'll tell you." The officer laughed to an audience of himself. "Do me a favor, buddy. Scratch my itch for me. Just want to make sure, I'm not missing on the biggest bounty of my life. Take off that mask." Tobias was out of options. There was nowhere to run. The man was waiting, and the bar was watching. "Buddy?" Tobias turned to him, straight on, and removed his mask. He let the man soak in the entirety of his face. The young, blond officer saw the Silver Fox, except he was older and weathered, aged and grayer. The bounty photo was from 10 years prior. "I do look like him, don't I?" The officer slid his hand to his holster and met the grip of his gun. "Yeah, you do." "I get that a lot." Silence sat like gunpowder waiting for its spark. A single chair squeak echoed like a bomb tick. Bedlam was a trigger pull away, and the officer wrapped his fingers around his gun's grip. Tobias watched with calm indifference, and his eyes said everything. "You don't want to do this." But the officer did. He drew his weapon. Tobias flicked out his claw blades, and before the officer fired, a hand wrapped around the officer's grip and clicked on the safety. "Officer Donovan." Claire appeared behind him. She shoved his gun back into his holster before he made a scene. He was shocked. He relaxed his grip from the gun, pretended like nothing happened, and was too scared to look her in the eyes. "Sabueso?" "Captain Sabueso." Yes, Captain. I'm so sorry. Claire squeezed his chin and turned him to look in her eyes. You know he's under my protection, correct? She dug her nails into his cheek, and the bar turned their focus from Tobias to Claire. Yes, of course, Captain. So then, what were you doing interrogating my parolee? To be honest, he started, obviously lying. I didn't know it was him. Well, now you know. So step aside. He did, and when she noticed the silence of the saloon, she faced them. They quickly turned away, returning to their business, pretending like they saw nothing. This bar bent to her whim, and having the silver fox on her leash only exacerbated her power. She relished it. Let's go, she told Tobias. Follow me. Tobias raised his eyebrows, smiled at Donovan, and taunted him as he waved goodbye. Claire marched past him. Tobias followed, and Nika fumbled to grab her drink as Tobias dragged her along.